Okay, I believe we have a quorum, Mr. Yates. I'll call the electoral area meeting of Thursday, January 26th to order. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the public agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed and carried. No petitions or delegations. Business items, draft financial plan for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a similar presentation as we gave the board yesterday. So just a little clarity on yesterday. We included, whatever we included for the electoral areas yesterday on the regional services, those are basically duplicated. I didn't want the EAs to be left out, so we just took their contribution to regional services put up. But the number is kind of meaningless anyways for you because we've taken all that and put them into the presentation today. So, but there's some interesting similar discussions on assessments and tax shifting on there that hopefully was somewhat entertaining. So today, what we've done is from our I guess year-end projections meetings that we've had, budget meetings, and our one-on-one meetings with EA directors, and then we've had a number of meetings between myself and directors, emails, phone calls. Aniko and Wolf has as well. We've taken all that input that we've received to date, and Mike obviously has his year-end assessments and figures in, consolidated that into the numbers that we're showing you now are what we're projecting in a draft budget. So we have an opportunity. We're going to try and walk you through that, show you what's all included in that, and the impacts that have, and as well, if there's a few opportunities we have as well, some input on some of the services. Director Vonish called me earlier and wanted a couple of changes, and so that's what we're hoping to do today is kind of put the final touches, input on anything you want in the budget, consolidate it with the regional budget and Strathcona Gardens when we meet, and then in February bring you a draft budget that we hope will get first 3 readings there. If not, we can continue the process, but I think we're going down a pretty comfortable lane, and we should be able to adopt the budget in February. So again, we want to go walk through all these. I think there's some familiarity everyone has because we've had so much discussion, which is excellent, and show you where you're landing on. And then we have a few comments for you on certain services that we've requesting to make a few amendments, changes on a few projects, and then if you have some things you want to tweak as well, happy to take those, and we'll insert them as I think they'll be minor at this point, and Mike can update the budget and have something ready for the board in a few weeks. So similar to yesterday, we have the same kind of presentation, just focused solely on EA services. So this is everything in your EA budget, single participant, shared, regional, the whole 9 yards. And what you see here is what you will get the average taxpayer that has the average house that uses every service, which, as I mentioned yesterday, that doesn't happen to everybody, but we kind of give a point to, this is what the impact is. Otherwise, we'd literally have a dozen different scenarios, which isn't going to do anyone any good. So having said that, pass it to Mike and we'll run through this. And at any point, I think it's, we're pretty liberal here. If we want to stop at something and you make a comment or a change or an explanation, we're happy to do that.
Thanks.
Question already.
Oh, I have questions. I was wondering when do I get to ask them?
I think they'll reveal themselves as we go through here. So what we've tried to anticipate is through discussions with all of you, what questions you may have. Hopefully they'll reveal themselves and eliminate some of them, and the remainders, then there'll be plenty of time to provide that input or ask questions.
Thanks. So, yeah, as Dave mentioned, this is going to look a lot like yesterday's presentation, but we've tried to change it up a little bit just so it's different and provides a bit more information. As mentioned, the goal of this meeting is mainly to introduce what we have so far and then do some tweaks and adjustments before we move into the February deliberation dates. So you can go to the next slide. We included some electoral area highlights, and again, these presentations will be sent out to everybody so you could have a perusal, and then we have some presentations after mine that are going to touch on some of these, so I won't get into too many specific things, but we kind of broken around different projects and how they meet the strategic priorities. So yeah, again, we'll make these slides available to you. So you can see the next one, and then
Can I
yeah.
ask a question on
Oh,
that one?
Go ahead.
I just noticed on Area A there, you had multi-use trail. What's that trail?
That was the I believe we called it a horse trail.
Oh, right.
In
right,
the
gotcha.
area, so,
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, like I say, Aniko and Wolfgang might touch on some of these points later, so I'll skip through it and stick with the more of the financial stuff. So, again, as we discussed yesterday, it's common to have an assessment tax shift impact every year, and when understanding the cost per home to try and figure out the impacts between what is a tax increase and what is assessment shift. We have some charts to hopefully explain that. Yeah, so this is the main one. It's slightly different than the one yesterday. It just includes your electoral areas. If everyone recalls, the change in the region was about 12.2 or 12.4%. But if you just look at the individual areas for shared service like planning, this year, Area C, there's going to be more of a drift of taxes towards Area C, and it'll come from the other areas. So even if the directors weren't to change anything, homeowners in Area C are going to see an increase. It's kind of interesting if you take like Area A or Area B, taxes are flowing out of those regionally, but there's also a shift in between assessment classes. So you're going to see, taxes for the overall area of A go down, but some of that's going to go into the residential. This is a breakdown of Area B's overall tax. So I'm trying to, their tax base for the area and how it shifts over the years. So in 2019, 5 years ago, you can see the residents paid 91.5% of all the taxes, and then as residential growth and assessments increase, you're now up to the 93.2%. So that's just the shift of tax burden effectively from the other 8 classes over to residential.
Well, I have a question on just on the last slide there. What is it? What is other? What is that other column?
The way
6.1% for 2020.
We have these slides for all the individual areas. So I've taken the top 3 of your areas to present, and then the other is all the other miscellaneous classes. So you have farmland, you have, in this case, you're going to have your light industry, your major industry, not for profit, and then a couple other ones from there. But that's overall, it's a small percentage, but depending on the area, like Campbell River doesn't have any managed forest lands, whereas the electoral areas have a larger portion.
Thank you.
And these are the assessment increases just for the area. Again, you saw this data yesterday. I guess the one point I want to bring out is depending on which source, everybody has a different average home value. So I just take the mathematical average that comes right from BC Assessment. So that includes all your vacant land, any of your split class residences or anything else. If you were to look at a lot of the realtor information, it's only the 2, 3, 4 bedroom houses that are primarily sale, and they won't include vacant land in their calculations. But overall, everything's pretty close. But that's just the one thing I've noticed is that some people have noted they've saw different average values. Next slide, and this comes from the province, just to kind of highlight the macroeconomic environment we're in with rising prices. But in your budgets, we kind of bake in any cost of living, some contracted increases, anytime insurance, hydro increases, project carry forwards, a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff. A lot of the service level changes and the big impacts to your budget you get presented through business cases or through staff reports or other type of meetings. We also have some periodic costs that we bake in. So if costs that reoccur every few years, like the election or some maintenance projects, and that is included. Next slide. So these are a little bit hard to see, apologies for that, but the page number you'll see in each individual area. But we'll get into the details after the presentations for any of the one services, but just a little recap of how to read it. The main colorful chart in the middle is your actual impact, and the gray chart off to the side measures that assessment tax shift. So if you look at the bottom service, the fire protection, that is not shared with any other area, so there's no regional shift, but you could see just because the home prices have increased faster than the business, the managed forest, and the industrial, the residences will see a large part of that increase will just be from the tax shift itself.
Just out of curiosity, a typical feasibility study like the Duncan Bay Fire Service, what would that cost?
Usually for that, we put in a $20,000 budget, I think, or usually the budgets are 20 to 50,000. The actual costs are, sometimes variable. Maybe Tom can comment.
So
I can speak to that. Because of the example you used, Gerald, the Duncan Bay fire protection, that's if it's successful through petition, $1,000 would more than cover it. If we have to go to a vote, we're talking 15 to 20,000.
Right, we don't want to go there.
So what you'll see in this one, for example, if that service gets established,
Yeah.
that service will pay back.
I
So it looks like a big chunk. It's going up substantially because we did it. So they establish it, they pay it back, and that will go to zero. So
Now, the Browns Bay one, is that dead and gone, or are we still funding some
no,
there?
it's still hanging in there. Yeah, I think there's still some life there. It's taking quite some time.
Are the residual costs for 2023?
I don't know for Browns Bay water sewer there. I don't think we're really spending any money. We're doing a lot of work with the developer and the consultants there, but we're not spending any money, no.
Good enough.
So I think these are worth pausing on. Just, quickly we look through it. If you look at Area A, we again take everybody, the average home using every service. It's a $123 per home increase over last year, 7 of that due to the tax shift. But as Gerald's moving towards, either a shared or independent fire service, $93 of that, of the 123 is for fire. That's the lion's share. And then the feasibility study, which is kind of, it makes it look bloated a little bit, that will disappear. So I'd say that probably makes about 90% of the increase there.
Yeah,
So.
my tax bill last year, I think, was $480 or something like that, so it's not much money anyways.
No, and what you'll see in this one, it'll drop dramatically. When we set the high water mark for Sayward Fire, that's not gonna move much, and feasibility go down, and we got a lot of stability within Area A functions, so looking quite good.
I can explain that to the constituents.
Yeah. And I think everyone understands the fire anyways, and everything else is quite stable, so.
Good.
So this is one for Area B, and again, you see a little bit more effect with the assessment shift, but overall, we're currently have an anticipated change before any further changes of $112 per home.
So if I can, I maybe Mark, this is a point we jump in here with.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be, fairly liberal as we go through here and we explain the process. So, Area B, one thing Mark had chatted to me about was the South Cortez, the fire protection service and the first responder, and wanted to increase those. So everything we've talked about that we're looking in these budgets is baked in, and should we not change anything today, it would be $112 a home additional in Area B. And Mark has obviously seen this and is comfortable with making some changes to the Cortez Fire and first responder. So Mark, just as we chatted with, you would like to see the Cortez Fire requisition represent a $300,000 budget number, am I correct? And then the first responder at 21,000, have I got that right?
Yeah, I'd like to go, the first responder go to 21,294, which is the same as last year. And then the actual fire service go from 264 to 350. And I'm not sure if the fire hall's already sent you their updated budget, but this reflects increase in administration and
Sure.
salaries to respond to the new standards that are going to be coming in for 2023.
Yeah, sounds good. So I just looked with Mike at noon, and I think with without the first responder, we were at 199, let's call it 200,000. So, so that's the fire without first responder. So if we got the first responder at 35, we'll change that to 21. The fire was at 200. Did you want that then to be 300 or 350?
The fire was at 264,905, the last document I looked at.
Yeah, that likely had the first responder baked in there as well. So what we had, what we had, the numbers you're seeing here reflect a 200,000 for the fire and a 35,000 for first responder.
Okay, yeah, those numbers are new to me. The last I looked at, two separate. One was you're asking, or the budget was at 37 for the 251 and 264 for the fire hall. But I do want the fire hall to go to 350, and I expect
okay.
I'll get you a budget.
Okay.
I'll get the budget
That's good.
for you to say.
So we'll do 350 and 21, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Just quick clarity, for the first responder, their request from us is in the mid $30,000 range, so to get down to 21, we'll probably start pulling from reserves.
The only thing is with their first responder budget kind of is a line item in their fire budget as well, so I'm not sure how they mix that, but as long as net the money's there, I don't think it's an issue, but we'll represent that at 350 and 21 there. All right, and again, a lot of stability is still in there. We chatted about, you know, some of the dips and valleys, and you know, taking those things out, and again finding a fairly stable service level. I think we're quite well there.
And for Area C, again, as far as the electoral areas, they were the biggest increase. So you're seeing that impact on the assessment shift. So overall, it's $65 per home, and $8.26 of that is just the assessment shift. And unless there's any specific questions, or if you want to get into all the services after,
Maybe if we can, let's hit a pause here again. I know I have been through it with Director Mawini, and I know Aniko as well, but if I think it's a good opportunity to take a pause, and if there's something within these, what we have is some more slides that give a little bit more detail about, excuse me, about the things that are included capital-wise in there. And I don't know if those are your questions or you wanted changes to these individual ones, but what are your thoughts right now when you?
Maybe I should see the rest of, do you want me to
Okay.
turn the mic?
Well, yeah, it's not critical if you want to now. We have a little more detail to follow because we have some requests of you of updated pricing and cost for a certain number of things. So happy either way you want.
I think that it would make more sense to hear and see the
Sure.
rest of the slides before I
Yep.
pop off with the
Okay.
questions that might get answered.
Good, okay. Again, I know we've been through it with you, but again, on that average home, average assessment value, $64. If everyone was receiving every service in there, with $8 of that being the tax shift.
Can, Edith, can I see the previous one, just like the area B for 1 second? I was curious, like when I looked at the other ones, there doesn't seem to be as much of a blue line, if you want to call it that, on the library and the planning in Area A and B as there is in Area C.
Right, it'll depend on the number, the assessment value and the number of homes that you have in your area, right? So if you have, if your assessments are higher, then your increase is gonna be more than what the previous. So what Mike measures that on is the
Okay.
change from last year. So nobody's gonna be equal. So if you look at, what's library, the percentage I can guarantee you is 8.1%, but how that is shared amongst the EAs is based on assessments.
Okay.
So.
Just because there's, these ones look like they're not getting a very big bump, but then it's bigger in Area C.
I can tell you the overall library budget was 8.1%, to the electoral areas, and then how that shared amongst them is slightly different. So this is
And is this
represent-
because Area C is the only one above that dotted line, so they're sort of carrying more of the library and the planning load?
The answer is yes. And again, that will fluctuate throughout the years, Sarah. I think,
Okay.
yeah, well, it does. So, but again, the overall from the library is 8.1, and how that resonates down through the electoral areas, and based on your assessments, you'll have a different change. And what that is percentage-wise over last year would be slightly different based
Okay.
on assessments.
Thank you, Dave.
And last on the list is Area D, so a couple drastic changes there. They have that new service for the flood protection, which affected the Service 790. The Service 790, we've always excluded that from the per household count. It only affects 35 households, but so they're seeing a rather large decrease there. And then, of course, for the Area D water, which is primarily driven by just volumes, the Campbell River price is pretty stable these days. We've seen some rather large increases in the prior years, but their bylaw just has a 1.25% annual increase, so that's what we assume. And the 2023 budget allows for a 5% increase in volume over the current year's amount.
So if I look at just, for example, the size of the bar on here, I look at the Vancouver Island Library, it looks like $7.18. The bar may not look, as imposing as Area C, but the dollar figure is $7.18. So again, relative to what the increase was over last year. There are a couple things that notable here. We 99% of the time take everyone and all the services and add those up and compare it to the average person in the average home. With this one, we did an exception. We took out Oyster River Bank Protection. It looks like a huge reduction. Well, it is $162 a home. There's only, I think, 20 or 25 homes on that service. So it's kind of an anomaly. So that isn't included. It would have skewed the numbers badly. So it's everyone excluding that. Those homeowners are certainly like it. We've dropped the requisition there considerably. And I think what's of note, if we look at here, we have an overall, if everyone's getting every service in Area D, the average home, there's an $8 reduction per home in taxes. So everything that we increased through the other services was offset by the water rates, and there's actually a reduction in taxes for Area D, which is nice to see.
And one further point of clarity, the Area D chart does include Strathcona Gardens, so after tomorrow it'll get increased. And then just to further address the library increase, in Area B, the assessment shift was actually pushing the overall cost per home down 2.8%, whereas in Area C, it's increasing it by 2.6%. So it's pretty much the direct opposite effect, but of course that changes year over year. This chart we have mimics the one that you saw yesterday, but this is just the regional district effect. So it's the 2022 tax per home divided by the change we're seeing in 2023, and again, we split Area A out into two just because there's such a drastic difference between the valley and over in Cayucit.
So up to this moment, everything you've seen in those numbers is, what we would produce in a draft budget. And what we'll try and do as well, you have all the information in your packages, there's every detail, but we just want to go through some of the slides and highlight the things that are embedded in here. These are all the things that we've talked about. You've provided input to us. They're in there, but we thought, okay, here's an opportunity to give you another visual on what things at a high level are included in it. It's not operations maintenance, it's capital, it's projects that studies, reports, grants, and all that we're working on. So maybe it will inspire some questions or thoughts you have, or answer some questions about what you thought may be in there. So we'll just roll through parks planning and engineering and kind of give you a little more visual about what's embedded in this stuff. And then again, while we go through it, we have a few asks of you as we've got a few updates on some costing on a few things. Excuse me, none of which I believe are requisition based. So any things that, I think they're mostly Anaco, but anything with that you see here are not going to be requisition impacts that we talk about. They'll be either contributions from gas tax reserves or transfer from reserves. So they wouldn't affect the number that you've just seen before you.
Awesome, thank you. So just a little bit from community services, like Dave said, focusing mostly on building, bylaw enforcement, planning and parks for each of the EAs. So for building, in addition to our ongoing daily operations of permitting and assisting our member munis in their building permitting processes. For 2023, we have some strategic initiatives which include a review of our building bylaw and updating the fees and some housekeeping type amendments to that bylaw. Bylaw compliance and enforcement, again, this is in addition to our day-to-day operations. We have a few strategic initiatives which are specific to some of our bylaws that are enforced through bylaw compliance. So we have on the docket for 2023 updating our municipal ticket information bylaw and looking to add additional enforcement powers to our enforcement officer to assist in compliance. We also have a review of our noise bylaw and unsightly premises bylaw. So lots of stuff happening in bylaw this year. Some of them do, some of them don't. Your municipal ticket would for everyone. Noise right now is just for Area D. Unsightly premises, Area D. There is a draft unsightly premises bylaw for Area B, which has just been put on the shelf and not brought forward. So there's that one. And then there was a request for Area A as well for noise bylaw.
Can I ask you, Aniko, is there going to be anything for the Cayuga Community Hall in 23?
The Cayuga Hall, we are proceeding with an additional assessment to determine how best to move forward with the structure, whether that would be a full rebuild or some renovation.
Will there be a 2023 assessment?
It will be a 2023 assessment. The current information we have looks as though the hiccup there is with respect to the foundation.
Right.
So it may be better to just rebuild, but we're looking for that final assessment to be done in early 2023.
Actually, while we're thinking about Cayuga, maybe Dave, we could go out there this year, July, August, something like that.
Yeah. Early July and fishing. Planning. So we are super busy with planning our day-to-day operations and the like, but we also have a number of long-range planning projects set for 2023. This is just a highlight of those bylaws that are currently either in process in different forms, or we are clear that there is some interest from each electoral area director to proceed or focus on. So the planning procedures and fees bylaw, primarily we're looking at updating the fee schedule for that. It hasn't been done in quite some time and is certainly in need of review. We have the Area B zoning bylaw. As you're aware, there was some work done on that. However, there is some additional consultation and updates to be done to that bylaw before we bring it back to the committee and board for approval. We have the Area C Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, which is, I think, close to being completed. Some direction from the director at the last meeting to go back and do a little bit more consultation with the task force and the consultant prior to bringing that document back again for consideration. There's the Area C OCP, which the community has expressed interest in. The Area D OCP review, where we have done a ton of work on that historically, and there is a draft document sitting on the shelf. Some additional consultation and updating, just given the time that's lapsed between that version and today. And there's also interest from both Area D community and the director to proceed with that. And then, of course, the Area D zoning bylaw, which is has been consolidated so many times and is in need of review. And we're seeing a number of planning applications that are related to that, just because there's updates that are needed. And so hopefully we can reduce the number of variances and the like if we can update that bylaw.
Annika, we're looking at a substantial cost increase to complete those things in '23?
Everything you see in the budget has been embedded in that. So unless we have some cost updates to some projects that
Yeah.
won't be requisitioned, but everything here is in the budget.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so parks, we have a number of key initiatives in the parks area as well. Some of them are specific to individual EAs, and some of them are more broad and cover all three of the four that receive the park service. Area A does not. So we have the Area B and D master plans for parks. We have updates for the parks rules and regulation bylaws, and a new parks rules and regulation bylaw for Area B, which currently doesn't have one. We have the parks inventory project, where we're going to hire a consultant to do our data gathering and mapping for each of our parks, so we know where our assets are and the conditions of those, which would then move into our asset management planning as well for all of our parks.
Yeah, maybe we can take a pause there. Director Maloney has a question too. Is it B and D or C and D?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's C and D.
C and D.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so I don't know if you had a question on that, but
Sorry, my
it
apologies.
might be a moment. We have, again, as I mentioned a couple times as we go through here, some updates to some costing and requests for you. So maybe as we go through these, we can take a pause and see if we can get input back. But I know, Aniko, for the excuse me, Area C Parks Master Plan, we have that in the budget and what you see here, and we have that being funded through gas tax. Now, I believe it was 35,000, but I believe you need to make it 70. The Area D Parks Master Plan, which is also funded within the budget, the numbers you see, and I guess we're requesting, if you support it, that the Area B Master Plan be changed from 35,000 to 70,000.
Area C.
Area C, sorry.
I know, sorry. We need to-
Sorry. Just seeing Mark's listening. And that would come out of, again, gas tax funds, so no change to the requisition that you've seen there.
Okay, well, we're talking about parks, which is great, because I have a few questions. And that's a good one to answer, because I was curious about, when it said parks, the inventory, I was wondering if that was part of the master plan project, or if that's a separate thing.
Separate, yeah.
That's a separate project that was approved previously in the budget, so the budget has been carried forward to 2023 to complete the project.
And when I was looking at the things that were attached to the agenda regarding the budget and the parks, I had a couple of questions, and one of them, well, I made probably too many questions for right now, but one of the things that I was curious about is that there's a list at the bottom of, I don't know how to call this page, Function 618 page, and it has quite a few items that say, let's, for instance, Reed Island property acquisition, Granite Bay boat ramp improvements, Blanken Trail Parks, and it says carry forward.
So if we could wait 3 more slides.
Oh, yeah.
We
Cool.
will go
Very
into
cool.
your specific parks capital projects. And there's some discussion certainly there from my end, and we're expecting from yours as well. So right now, we just wanted to kind of go over the more long-range projects and then move to each of the 3As just to discuss their capital projects to ensure there's no required changes there. So I think at this point, yeah, we just wanted to make sure, it was brought up at the last, the November single participant meetings with respect to your Parks Master Plan. And so we did indicate at that time that we need to increase that budget to 75. So before the end of this meeting, it would be good to have direction on that, because currently we only have 35,000 in there from gas tax.
So there is, on the next page of the Function 618, it states that there's a $43,000 government transfer project carry forward for parks inventory and master plan.
That's the two combined. That's the parks inventory works and the current $35,000 for your parks master plan.
Okay, that's the difference.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't understand. Okay.
So what we're
And it says
needing-
that it's reclassed to transfers from reserves for 2023, so I wasn't really clear what that meant.
So yeah, in the year before, we had it as government transfers, but technically it should be classed as a transfer from reserve. So it's just an accounting thing more than anything. But I had to put the note there just to comment on the change.
But we do, if you can go back, we do, as we flow through this, we do need direction on certain items. Either you support or you don't support it. And I think at this point, it's the Area C Parks Master Plan. And do you support the increase from the 35 to the 75 out of gas tax reserves?
Okay, so the 35,000 is already from gas tax reserves into
Yes.
some other account. So is that correct? Or
It
some,
Just allocated specifically for this project already.
in a previous year?
Yes.
Right, so then we would be moving
40,000.
40,000 from gas tax to the Parks Master Plan. I
Yeah.
think that's fine.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so just moving on to the Parks capital projects for Area B. As discussed or highlighted, I guess, in the November single participant meeting, these are the key projects that we have planned for 2023. Some of them are carry forwards from previous years. The beach access work, phase 2 of that, signing and trailing beach accesses that were previously identified through our beach access project. This is a new one that wasn't presented, unfortunately, in November. We missed this one. So for Director Vonish, this is the Carrington pit toilet replacement. And in order to proceed with this project, we would be looking at asking for an additional $20,000 to be allocated from gas tax to assist with that. Other than that, I think most of these other projects we already discussed, but the Cross Island Trail planning, there's funds already in the budget to assist with that, about $55,000 actually out of gas taxes. We have the Hanks Beach parking lot expansion. It's just a minor project. We have some continued works in Quas. We did complete the Surge Bridge just recently in 2022, but there's some additional boardwalk replacement and small bridge works at the south entrance. So we still have a carry forward from our 2022 budget, about $24,000 to complete that project. We also have the Wales Rest Boardwalk and trail surfacing, and that about rounds out the capital projects for Area B. But we would be looking for direction with respect to the ask for Carrington pit toilet.
So Director Vonch, everything that you see here, again, is just bringing out what was in the discussions and the capital projects master plan in Area B, with the one exception. So we have everything that you see in your budget has included all this except Carrington, the pit toilet replacement. If you're supportive, we would allocate $20,000 out of the gas tax for Area B, and it have no effect on requisition.
Is this replacing a toilet that was made by community members? Because as far as I know, there isn't like a SRD toilet there at all right now.
That's correct. It's a very rustic facility currently in need of replacement.
Okay, can we chat about this after? That just, it's new to me. I'd love to understand more of the details.
We can. What we're trying to do here, though, is we're trying to come up with a final, a draft budget for presentation to the board, and what should be in and out, and so we're kind of looking for either support or non-support of the funding. I suppose it's not super critical today, but it would like to get either support or not for that, so that we can again finalize the draft budget and bring it for presentation. So If you're not comfortable with this, I suppose we could park it, but again, if it isn't included in the budget, it won't get built this year.
Yeah, okay. My understanding is that there was some new toilets built there last summer. I know there was like an old toilet, which I think is the one you're thinking about replacing. I think I'll hold off on that one for now.
Okay.
Okay, so Area D. Again, in addition to our normal operating work, we have some capital projects. Again, all of these are actually carry forwards from previous years, and all are in the existing budget. The only amendment I wanted to make note of here is for the Salmon Point Trailhead. Again, this has been budgeted in previous years. We just haven't proceeded with the work. We're looking at doing some preliminary planning for this, and just wanted to change the funding source for this project. Currently, it's $21,000 coming from reserves, and we would be looking to change that to the funding source coming from gas tax.
Yes, go ahead with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hagel Park drainage. So again, that's currently in your budget. It's about $15,000 in gas tax. Hagel Park Greenway and Story Creek North preliminary trail planning. $15,000 is allocated from gas tax. And then the Story Creek Bridge, $75,000 coming again from gas tax. Thank you. Next slide. Area C, this is a big one. So
Best for last.
if you were, I did put this last just because there's a lot of discussion. But last year there was a lot of work actually that occurred in Area B. So last year for parks we called it, the Area B year. This year I think it's Area C year. So again, a lot of these projects, or most of these projects, are currently in your financial plan. Lincoln Park has a number of projects, some of them being funded through the regional district and some elsewhere. But again, none of these would be affecting your requisition, and all of them are in the existing budget. There are a number of other projects. Granite Big Boat Ramp, that's a carry forward, but looking for an increase in funds there. I'll get into the details in a minute. Granite Bay Shoreline Wharf Works, again, it's in the budget, but we need an increase there. Hoskin Wharf replacement and parking lot expansion, again, in the budget, but needing an increase. Q Cove Trail extension in the budget, needing an increase. And the Surgeon Narrows Marine Revitalization Project, that is our amazing grant that we've received for $1.9 million. Just to talk about some of the asks here, when we were discussing in November during the single participant meetings, the Q Cove Trail extension, we have spent most of the funds that were previously allocated from gas tax, and in order to complete the sections that we can at this time, we require $120,000 additionally to be added to that budget. We also have the Granite Bay Shoreline repairs, so we actually did go out to tender for that, and the lowest bid is significantly more than what we had initially allocated. So currently we have about 19,500 allocated from gas taxes, and we need to increase that to approximately 45,000.
That's the boat ramp?
Sorry, the shoreline repair, shoreline repairs.
Oh, because you have one line item, you have one line item there that says Granite Bay Shoreline and Wharf Works, and then you have a separate one that says boat ramp. So the boat ramp is the part where you drive in.
The drive down, yeah.
Okay.
So
Which part are we talking about right now?
Sorry, the shoreline repair, The shoreline repair, we went out to tender, and that's the one that we currently have 19,500 allocated, and we need a minimum of 45,000 to be able to commence those works.
And it's why, what has happened? The wharf is being added onto, is that, or like it, in my notes, it says shoreline repairs and it mentions erosion work, and now I see the word wharf as well. So what, is something added on? Is that why it's doubled in price?
No, just ignore the last part of that.
The word wharf works?
Yeah.
Okay, because we got a lot of wharf things already going on, and that's why I
Oh,
needed
don't worry,
to know.
yes, we do. Yeah, so this is specific to the shoreline protection that is currently there and is eroding and going to start affecting the rest of the land and the facility. So we need to address those shoreline, or that shoreline device, and currently we cannot do that with the amount of budget that we have.
I
That's
see.
granite-based shoreline.
Okay, so you need an extra $25,000 for that one.
Right.
And can we just have like full disclosure? What are the other amounts that you said there were several?
We only got one.
No, what were the other gas tax project amounts, like?
Yeah, you said there was
Yeah,
more.
Yeah, I'll keep going.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So then we have the boat ramp. So we currently have Granite Bay Boat Ramp improvements. We have $20,000 coming from reserves in the budget. And we know that we need an increase in order to proceed. So we're looking at an ask of $30,000 from gas tax. So moving your funding source from reserves to gas tax and increasing it by 10. So we would give $20,000 back to reserves, and we would take $30,000 from gas tax. So we would change the funding source, and we would ask for an increase.
That's exciting and a tiny bit spontaneous, and I want to think about it before I give you an answer. And then we have a Hoskin Wharf replacement. Currently, we have $100,000 in the budget from gas tax, and we know that we need double that. So we need an additional $100,000 from gas tax for the Hoskin Wharf replacement. And one more, and it's a new capital project that has not been included in the budget. And that's for Evans Bay Wharf. It's in need of significant repairs. And we would be looking at $150,000 from gas tax. I guess this begs the question, when you mention Evans Bay, like that's in the,
Parks Wharf.
okay, it's not one of the ones that was divested. It belongs to Parks already. Okay. But it could be being included in the wharf service in the future.
It could be, yeah. Regardless, we'll need funding for it. It wouldn't come out of Transport Canada, and if it's gas tax allegation, it doesn't really matter what service it's in. So you have work that needs to be done. You either have a gas tax allocation, you do nothing, and or you increase a parks requisition to do that work, which I would not recommend. So yeah, you have it in your package, but I think it might be. Yeah, you have, I'll give this to you in a second. You have an unallocated gas tax amount of 1.55 million right now. So I think cumulatively what Honoco has presented to you is a little over 400,000. So you have much more than 1.5, but a number of those items have been allocated. So unallocated 1.55 million with about 400,000 in front of you right now. You have
Just
that.
one question that I thought might help clarify. If the money was allocated, when would the projects move forward?
Well, as soon as possible, yeah.
Okay, because we are running approximately 7% inflation, so, you know,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. We are.
Okay, well,
Spend some money.
That's what it's for.
And if I may, so when we ask for these allocations from gas tax, we kind of set the ceiling, and, I mean, what we don't spend gets returned back. So we try to comfortably fund the project from gas tax, and then once the project is completed, Mike closes out the account, and then whatever's remaining goes back into your gas tax to be used for other projects.
And that's awesome. I guess one of my things is kind of thinking about what Director Rice said about, inflation and costs. And when I look at all these items that are listed as carry forwards, and they weren't accomplished, and now we're doubling the spend on each one of them, I wonder, if they had been accomplished in a more timely manner, would that have affected the price tag? It's hard to know, I guess.
The reasons for that are going to be complicated, and will not be all staff related, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think it's too bad I didn't have the slides that I presented you in the single participant meetings back in November, because those slides for each of your EAs actually showed a significant number of projects in each of your EAs that were completed in 2022. So I will resend those to all of you so you have those.
Sure, that's no problem. And it sounds like we get to spend some money on parks. Whoop, whoop.
If we get your blessing.
Oh, yes. Let me just pull out my magic wand. Here you go. Bless. Spend some money on parks. I think that sounds like those, they're not technically all actually parks. They're parks related. They're wharves and things like that. And I think that those are important things to keep up the upkeep of.
We're taking that as a yes, then.
And if I may, just one further note, as we were discussing a few minutes ago with respect to some of the long-range planning projects, the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan for Area C, just for your information, we have spent more than the budget for that project, the grant funding that we received. So we're already paying out of, we have paid out of pocket for last year for some of the final works that were done on that plan. And so now with the direction from the board to do further consultation with the consultant, that will come out of either your operational budget or an allocation from gas tax, because there's no funds left for that, and that hasn't been included in either your operations budget or your gas tax. So we need some direction on where you would like that money to come from, and we're looking at about $6,000.
I think staff would suggest it's such a small amount, and given your gas tax allocation, I wouldn't suggest requisitioning that. I would say make a contribution from gas tax in there. It'll finish that, tidy up. It won't have an impact to any requisition budget.
That makes sense. And so I'm guessing that the $6,000 isn't all for the one extra meeting that's happening. It's probably for other things that have already been expended as already.
Yeah, it's for travel for the consultant and any additional work that will come out of that meeting. And whatever we don't spend, like I said, will be returned.
Yeah, so we'll aim high so that we don't have to, and if we underspend, it goes back there. And also, our CFO has advised us that any item 5,000 and under through gas tax is an automatic audit, so this will conveniently be $6,000.
Excellent, thank you.
I still have a comment on this slide.
Yeah, so, okay, we'll just let Wolf run through this again. We'll just go through some engineering highlights, and again, all these things, I believe, included in the budget. I don't think Wolf has anything additional asked. It's just highlights what's included in what you've seen in your budgets.
Can you tell me my unallocated gas tax?
Yes, Area A, 732.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you, Dave. So engineering highlights, I'm just going to go through all of these highlights by electoral area, and I would like to start with Area A. So there was a request by the province to work with the Cayuga Chaclas First Nations to explore options to supply water to Walters Islands and the surrounding areas. That's a request that came late 2022, and we're going to be working on that. We have also refuse collection. We're going to be increasing the user fees for the collection and disposal to balance the increased service delivery costs, and this is largely linked to the tipping fees. For Area B, we're going to be working with the Strathcona Waste Management Group to review the commercial fees for waste disposal. We're going to investigate the waste disposal options at the government dock, and we're going to increase as well user fees for solid waste disposal to align with the increase of tipping fees.
Can I just add a question for you? Can you just remind me what happened to that water line we had over to Walters Island that we just finished paying off a couple of years ago?
It's still there.
And why doesn't it serve it? What's the problem?
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Basically what it is the First Nation is not obligated to continue supplying water and maintaining the distribution system. And it has been expressed that they do not wish to actually gain the authority to continue doing to the KC event.
Not even for a fee, eh?
I think one of the issues is them selling water and meeting the Canadian drinking water guidelines and the liability.
Right.
And I think, I've never personally seen their water source or their treatment, but I think that one's, yeah. So, you know what the plan will be here is we'll investigate what a water supply system will cost out there. It'll be a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then we'll start making applications for grants out there. Because there's, whatever it costs, there's no way that few houses will be able to, anything they can contribute would be insignificant. So we'll do the study, whatever, it'll be $1, $2, $3 million, whatever it is, and then we'll try and get grants.
All right, they're not gonna run out of water in the meantime?
No.
I had just one comment on Wolfgang for the waste disposal options at the government dock. There's actually 4 docks, so I just want to make sure that that's clear that it's at government docks rather than the government dock.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Area C, we're going to be updating the capacity study. This is the report that we introduced yesterday to the board. Thank you. We're going to be increasing the user fees to balance the increased service delivery costs as well, and this is due to the fact that the asset is aging, and we're going to be very likely we're going to be doing a lot of repairs to that old system. We're going to be monitoring announcements to an application that we submitted last year to Infrastructure and Invest Canada. We also will continue looking at our options to see if we can submit more applications to the wastewater treatment plant. We're going to support the work service by law establishment procedure, and we're going to make sure that the project is ready for tendering and construction once the bylaw has been established. We're going to pursue further investigation on the well sites proposed for a water service area in the Kwatioski Cove. And for Area D, mentioned it earlier today, that decrease for tax requisition for the water service. We're going to monitor announcements to the application that we submitted to the province for universal metering. As well, we'll continue looking at all options to see if we could apply for more funding for this specific item. We're going to work towards connecting the bulk meters to the internet to actually have real-time monitoring. I think this will help us with having more control as well for the city, Campbell River, and SRD. We're going to develop a project plan and prioritize main water replacements. Explore the feasibility of providing a drainage service. 100,000 K has been allocated from the gas tax fund. And we're going to follow up on the application that the city of Campbell River submitted for 3 shelters for Area D. As well, we're going to begin planning additional shelters for 2024 and 2025, and $20,000 has been allocated from reserves.
Is that part of an existing transit service that Area D has? Yeah.
That's correct.
I was curious, you mentioned that there was well sites being pursued in the Area C engineering. Could you give me some more details on that, please?
There was a feasibility study was completed in 2020. It was not completed, but we have a preliminary study done by an engineering firm about water. The reason why the study hasn't been completed is because more field testing is required. We gotta go and test one of the wells to confirm that the quality of the water is there and the amount of water as well. So in order to do that, it's limited to cost right now. The proposal that we received back in 2013 was $120,000 to do that. That has never been approved. That's why we haven't been able to complete the study. But we have a copy, and we're happy to provide you with that of what's been done to date.
So when you said it was on your engineering list for 2023, what did that mean? Because you said you have no funds for it.
It means to actually revisit that and provide an update to how much would actually cost to proceed with that.
Ah, okay, great. Thank you for explaining that.
At the same time, that's going to help us if we're, have some kind of project partner or grant application we want to submit that to an application and/or partner with somebody, and knowing the cost and the details involved with that will be helpful, so. I believe that's all we have for you. Is that correct? I anticipate Director Mawhinney has more questions. But from our perspective, appreciate that input. It's very helpful. Conditional upon what Director Mawhinney gives us, we will make these changes to the budget and incorporate in the draft budget, consolidate it with the other two areas, and present this. Vast majority of what we've talked about here will not affect requisitions, so the numbers that we've provided you for all the services and the requisition amounts won't change, with a few exceptions to that, one being the fire in Area B. But let's see what Director Mawhinney has.
I have a list.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure if all these questions are necessarily totally applicable to here, but because they're all things that were in my budget package, I'm going to ask them. One of the questions I have is about the Electoral Area C street lighting service, and I know we have reached the maximum requisition, and I'm curious how we could apply to BC Hydro for LED lighting so that we don't have to exceed our maximum requisition and we don't have to ask for more money. Because I was talking to Director Davis, and he mentioned that his municipality has all been upgraded to LED lighting by BC Hydro.
Okay, I'll let Wolf answer the question about applying for LED lighting grants. But what we'll generally do at the end, when the budget's adopted, we'll look at maximum requisition levels in different services and bring those forward if they need amending or pushing forward. So if we're pushing up against a requisition for something like street lighting, I would anticipate having to push that number up because rates always increase annually. Even if you convert them, you're going to need some room. So after the budget's amended, we will likely bring a number of services forward and say, look, we've peaked at these max requisitions. We're going to need to push those forward. Having said that, if there's an application for the lights, Wolf can.
If I am correct, BC Hydro approached the regional district asking us for choose out of two types of lighting, LED lightings, to be replaced, and it was my understanding that these lights were replaced already. This is it works for Electoral Area D. So I'm just gonna follow up to see where they are with that work, because we chose the lights, they gave us a list, we chose that for rural areas, and I just need to know what the status of that is, and if not, and I will get back to you on that as well for Electoral Area D. And if they haven't done that and we need to apply, I would need to familiarize with that process, and so something for us to add to our list of things to do. And just to let you know that this list was provided to us like early 2022, so I'm quite surprised if they haven't done that work.
Okay. Well, I don't know if they have or not. I just assumed that if they were LED lights, then the cost would probably go down quite a bit, so we wouldn't be bumping against the top. It doesn't seem like there's been a decrease in the cost, so, and I don't think there's been any more lights installed.
Maybe not, but I mean, the cost of energy keeps going up. I would doubt you would see a decline in that, but we'll see.
My next question is about the heritage conservation budget, and it has a note at the bottom that a $10,000 budget was set during the 2021 single participant meeting, and I'm curious if there were suggestions on what was being considered at that time.
A quick ad for that. Just like here, do we want to pull these budget pages up as we flip through?
Sure, you can.
Oh, okay. But the $10,000 was just to save it ahead of time, so that was the director's initiative, just to put it in. So if at any time there is an initiative or a building or somebody needs some money, there'd be a $10,000 budget available to spend without having to do a budget amendment. So it's mostly a contingency.
Okay, thank you.
Similar, I guess, to the concept of having a parks acquisition fund. If there's no money in the fund, doesn't really do you much good. So I think the thought process there is didn't really have any projects in mind, but should one come forward, there'd be a little bit of money for something.
Thank you. On the Quadra Island Community Hall, I noticed that there is a carry forward of Quadra Island Hall seismic upgrades, but it also mentions that it was completed. So I'm curious why it's still being listed if it needs more work.
What's your page number?
167. Yeah, so that was funds that were remaining from phase 1 of the seismic upgrade that we completed, I don't even remember what year that was, a number of years ago. And we have kept that money to possibly be available if we were to proceed with a phase 2 with the seismic upgrade, but we would need to do further planning on that. But those funds were unspent funds from phase 1, and it was grant funding.
Is it gas tax funding or grant funding?
I don't recall the funding source. Do you have that, Mike?
Yeah, that was a grant funding. I believe it's all out of the same pile, but it's not the gas tax that you know of. It's out of the strategic priority fund.
Yeah, like a specific grant that we applied for and were successful with.
Okay, thank you. And I did notice that in the 2022 parks operating budget, there was other revenue of $51,000, which seemed like an amount that didn't show up in the 2023. And I was curious if somebody could speak to that.
I'd have to look, but usually that's grant funding.
I believe, what page on?
165.
165. So that is a combination of two things, but we got grants in lieu of parkland. And sorry, there should be a note for that. But if you look in the comments, we received $45,132 for cash in lieu of parkland. And then the balance is we're making some lease revenue from the Granite Bay Mortgage.
So that was received as part of subdivision requirements.
Oh, okay, thank you.
One more. That's also why your transfers to reserves is $45,000 above budget. We just take the money and put it in the land purchase reserve.
Okay, that explains some of those question marks I had drawn on here.
Yeah, any further questions there, Director Maloney?
I have only one more question, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
And that's around function 331, the Quathiaski Cove sewer. And the increase is significant. I understand that the system is vintage and ailing and requires upgrades and reserves for contingencies. But I do feel for the folks who are part of this service, seeing this jump in rate when the cost of everything in our daily lives is already increasing. And I'm wondering what we can do to explain this increase to the folks who are going to be affected by it. And I was wondering if we could agree at this meeting that we were going to send out a thoughtfully worded letter to explain the increase and also maybe some relative numbers for other small sewer services that they could understand and compare with, if that makes sense?
We have in the past sent out with the bills. It's cheaper and easier and more efficient for us to, when we send out a bill, to enclose a mailer with it. We've done that in the past. We can certainly do it again. Yeah.
Okay. I think that I would like to do that, please.
I think we typically have, we've done an Area D water too before, when, we realize that there's a significant increase. I mean, the reasons for it can be delicate, so we'll certainly pass it by you before we send it out, but I'm not, the facts of the answer cannot be kind sometimes, so.
What month does that go in?
I don't know when our sewer bills go out, if we do that twice a year, or I'm not sure how often you send those out.
Typically, we do it once in the year. So in the past, you approve the budget, but in order for us to change the fees, we have to bring the fees and bylaw to you as well. And so it will get, that's when it's formally done. So we actually can't, this is just the budget, so the actual increase will come later. So you actually have another chance to address any of that.
Okay, so when it comes before the board, or does it come to EASC and then I would ask for the letter?
No, the letter's fine, it's direction, staff will do it. What Mike is saying, we have to amend the bylaw of the rates and fees, so the budget gives us direction to do that. The budget gives us direction to do a lot of things. There's some administrative tasks to do after that, so we'll amend the fees and charges. Presumably, you'll approve that, considering you approved the budget, and then once that is, we're able to send out the bill. In the meantime, we'll work on an insert that explains the changes and represents what other systems charge.
Thank you so much for that explanation.
So Area B, Director Benesh, do you have anything further?
Nothing than what I've already said, thank you.
And Director D, or Area D, Director Rice, do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything to ask. Thank you.
All right, so we have a notice, motion of receipt on the floor, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. And now we're looking for a motion to terminate.
I'll move termination.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
I was opposed.
Well, you only get one vote, though.